Have you ever noticed how a massive earthquake can strike somewhere and barely make the news, but then a smaller one hits elsewhere and it becomes this absolutely devastating catastrophe? It's a real puzzle, and it goes way beyond just the raw power of nature. So today, let's unpack the hidden factors that turn a natural event into a human disaster.
Okay, to get us started, just look at these two scenarios. On one side, you have a powerful 7.0 magnitude earthquake. It hits a remote, totally unpopulated desert, shakes the ground, and that's about it. On the other side, that exact same 7.0 quake hits a dense city, a place with older buildings and not much in the way of a response plan. It's the same event, same power, but the outcomes, they're going to be wildly different.
And that leads us to the big question for this whole explainer. Why is one of these a genuine disaster, while the other is, well, just a thing that happened? If you think the answer is only about the earthquake's strength, you're only seeing a tiny piece of the real picture. The real story, it turns out, is all about us. To really figure this out, we have to get our terms straight. We throw around words like hazard and disaster all the time, almost like they're the same thing. But in the world of risk assessment, they mean two completely different things. And that difference is everything.
So first up, what's a hazard? A hazard is just the natural event itself. An earthquake, a hurricane, a flood, that's the hazard. And the key phrase here is potential to cause harm. That earthquake out in the empty desert, it's definitely a hazard, but its potential for harm is super low because, well, there's nobody there to harm. A disaster, on the other hand, isn't the event, it's the result. It's what happens when that hazard slams into a community that is vulnerable, a community that just can't handle the impact. The critical point is this: if you don't have people, and you don't have vulnerability, you don't have a disaster.
And that word, vulnerability, is so important. It brings us right to the first major human factor in this whole equation. It's the secret ingredient that can take a simple hazard and amplify it into a full-blown catastrophe. So what is vulnerability, really? Well, it's basically the degree to which a community is susceptible to getting hurt by a hazard. It's kind of like a measure of its social, economic, and physical weaknesses when a threat is on the horizon. And listen, vulnerability isn't some abstract idea. It's very real. It's poverty that forces people to live in unsafe housing. It's weak infrastructure, bridges that could collapse, power grids that could fail. It's not having good healthcare nearby, or not having any disaster plan in place. These are the cracks in a community's foundation, just waiting for a hazard to strike. But it's not all doom and gloom, because the opposite of vulnerability is just as powerful, and it's called resilience. And this is all about a community's ability to bounce back. Resilience is a community's inner strength. It's the ability to not just survive a hazard, but to absorb the shock and recover effectively. You can think of it as a measure of how quickly a town or a city can get back on its feet. And you can build resilience with concrete actions. We're talking about constructing stronger buildings, having early warning systems that actually give people time to prepare, educating the public on what to do, and having solid emergency plans ready to roll. These are the investments that pay off in a huge way when a hazard hits. So now we've got all these different concepts: hazard, vulnerability, resilience. So how do they all fit together? Well, it all comes down to a simple but really powerful formula that explains everything. Let's build it, piece by piece. First, you've got the hazard itself, right? This is the natural event, the storm, the earthquake. It's the physical force that we can't really control. Next, you multiply the hazard by exposure. This just means that people and buildings and roads have to actually be in the way of the hazard. I mean, a hurricane in the middle of the ocean isn't a risk to anyone, right? But as soon as it gets near a coastline packed with cities, the exposure just skyrockets.
And finally, you multiply all of that by the most important human factor we've been talking about: vulnerability. How prepared are the people in that exposed area? How strong are their buildings? How quickly can first responders get there? That's vulnerability.
And when you put it all together, you get the disaster risk equation. The risk of a disaster equals the hazard times the exposure times the vulnerability. Now notice they are multiplied, not just added together. That's so important. It means if you can get any one of these factors close to zero, especially vulnerability, you can slash the overall risk dramatically. So check this out. A region can face a huge hazard, like a massive storm. But if its exposure and vulnerability are low, because people are prepared and the infrastructure is strong, the actual risk is low. But on the flip side, a really vulnerable region can face even a small hazard and still have a super high risk of a disaster. It's a complete reversal of what you might think. So why does all this matter? I mean, why is this framework so important? Because it completely changes how we should think about disasters. It moves us away from just, helplessly reacting to Mother Nature and toward proactively managing our own human systems.
And this really gets to the heart of it. A quote from our source material says it perfectly. The severity of an event isn't just about its physical power. It's about the social, economic, and political context where it happens.
So here's the ultimate takeaway. There is no such thing as a truly natural disaster. The hazard, the storm, the earthquake, that's natural. But the disaster part, that's human. It's a product of our choices, where we build our cities, how we build our homes, and how we take care of the most vulnerable people among us.
And that leaves us with one final and really crucial question. Look, we can't stop earthquakes from happening. We can't stop hurricanes from forming. But we absolutely can control our vulnerability. So the real question we all have to ask is, what can we do right now to make our own communities stronger, more resilient, and less vulnerable? Because the answer to that question can literally save lives. It's the difference between a tragic headline and a community that stands strong.